Hello and welcome to the Women Changing the World podcast. I'm your host, Olivia D'Souza, and today I am chatting with Laura Elizabeth. Hello, Laura.
Hey, how are you?
I'm really well. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on this morning.
I am so thrilled to have you here. Okay, so let's jump into it. Laura, who is Laura Elizabeth? Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Oh, okay. Big question. A lady who wears many, many hats. So most recently, I developed Maven Press under the mentorship and guidance of the beautiful Karen McDermott, who I'm sure you've spoken to many, many times before. So I worked on a few book projects with Karen, and we had a chat, and as she does so beautifully, gave me this magical nudge and said, you need to be publishing. And so about 10 months ago, I opened Maven Press, and we're now working on our 5th book, which is very, very, very exciting. We've got so much in the works, and it's so beautiful to be able to, I guess, hold women's stories and put them out into the world. And that leads me into my other hat as an embodiment and sexuality coach. So for a very, very long time, first and foremost as an energy worker, I've always held women's stories, and I feel like publishing is an extension of that, and it's a way that we can heal through our stories. It's another form of healing, another form of art, and another way of being able to inspire everyone around us and make the world a better place. So in a nutshell, that's me, and that's what I do.
Wow, that's so super interesting. I could go in so many directions with this. But perhaps first I'll ask if you could tell us a bit about what the story is that you shared in the book.
Sure. So my story is really about, if you're picking up this book, you're already aligned with the change maker archetype. And, 1, you need to get started. 2, know why you're doing what you're doing, and dropping into that alignment when you get out of bed every day, when you're clear in your intention and who you're serving and why you're serving, it makes things so much easier. Makes it easier to have the courage to keep showing up, and the determination to make things happen, because it's not always easy, particularly when we use statements like changing the world. We're not always going to be going with the masses. Often we're the ones that are standing, waving our flags, going, hang on, what if we did it this way? What if we did it that way? Keeping a close community, knowing that you don't have to do everything by yourself, and knowing that, once you stay in your lane and inviting, people who are solid in their why and solid in their lane, and co-creating change together is so important, so that we don't burn out, so that we don't take on too much, and so we can, really stay aligned and clear in what we're doing and get beautiful, beautiful results. And about not needing to explain yourself. It takes a lot of courage to step out of the mold, to say, this isn't good enough, or I can see gaps here, or, there's always, it's like, what else is possible? There's always more. And often you're going to come up against questions and finger pointing. And the truth is that you don't actually have to explain yourself. It's okay for you to have big ideas. It's okay for you to want to make change. It's okay for you to take massive leaps of faith, and it's okay to fail. So my story sort of goes into each of those pieces, and talking a little bit about my experience through the years, going back, into my teens as an anxious, nervous, terrified, quiet mouse of a thing, into, who I am now, constantly speaking, constantly evolving, creating these opportunities for other people to step into, and creating opportunities for growth for myself, and being okay with being uncomfortable.
Actually, again, so many facets that I could ask about. one thing that jumped out to me, because I recognised myself in it, is being a quiet mouse of a thing in the school years. So I'm interested to know, well, how did that change?
Having children changed that for me. That really woke my mother bear. And all of a sudden it was no longer okay for me to stay silent. It was a very interesting transition. I have 3 children, and I remember the birth of my son. He's almost 12. And I remember, after his birth, it was just like this fierce warrior that came over me, and it was no longer okay to stay silent about things. And so, it would start off by, standing up for him, and what I, really tuning into that mama's intuition, and protecting him, and all of those things. And then, each child subsequently after that. But what that did, as I sort of dropped deeper into that, was start to speak up for myself at the same time. And it was this beautiful organic process where they taught me that it was okay to have a voice. They taught me that it was okay to say no. They taught me it was okay to stand up for myself. So I really do believe that I owe that to them.
That's a fascinating part of motherhood, isn't it? I know I used to be a bit scared of becoming a mother, in some senses, that it would just end opportunities for me, or I wouldn't be able to do things. And it's just incredible how it's actually you birth another version of yourself, isn't it?
Yeah. It's almost the opposite. It's like, what else? There's so much that's possible for them, and trying to be that leader and that guide for them to be able to see that like attracts like, right? So it's like, if mum can do these things, I can do, these things or these things.
Yes. So, yeah. It's like we're mirrors for each other, aren't we? So, oh goodness. Okay. So what about the why? If someone's not clear on the why, would you have anything to say on that to help anyone who's feeling a bit lost, who knows that there's something more but can't quite get clear?
There's a really beautiful and simple exercise that I feel like I revisit this every 6 months or so, in that sort of that rebirthing period, as inspiration's dropping in, and I'm like, oh, okay, where am I? What needs to go? Is there anything that's no longer in alignment? And really, it's writing down everything that you're doing in your business, or everything that you're doing in your workplace, down to the tiniest little things. And I remember the first time I did this, I had about 16 different offerings. There was Reiki, and there was reflexology, and there was head massage, and there was, the list just went on and on and on. And then beside each thing, I wrote down, out of 10, 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest, where that lit me up the most, where it set my soul on fire. And then anything that was not a 9 or a 10 out of 10 left. It was like, okay, I no longer do this. And then meeting those fears of, oh, but that's been my bread and butter, or I've got these beautiful clients who've been with me for 5 or 6 years. It was like, but it's not lighting you up. So in order to invite more love, more abundance, more expansion in, we need to be doing the things that fill us up. And meeting those fears, and being okay with letting people down, knowing that there's 100 other Reiki practitioners that are just as good, if not better, than what I could provide when my heart's not fully in it. And so anytime that things are feeling murky for me, I'll do that. I'll write down every single thing that I've got on the go. And if it's not lighting me up, it goes, with love and compassion and a hope for, something better to come in. And then also just being really clear on, why you're doing what you're doing. What is that bigger mission? What is that, greater vision for you? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? What does your life look like in 5 years' time if you are living the absolute best possible life that you can imagine? And then how does that drive your why?
So in doing that, like you said, you mentioned giving away work. So is that would have been, again, a leap of faith as far as the money will come in? I've just said no to this income, I'll be okay.
100%, like absolute huge leap of faith, over and over and over again, that yeah, and I believe that the first time I did that, I nailed it down to like 4, so from 16 to 4 services that I provided. And then I no longer had to advertise. It was this strange pull from the universe, right? Where I let those things go and all of a sudden I was fully booked. and I haven't had to advertise since, I don't think. It's quite amazing. You know, everything would be word of mouth, or there'd be, you know, inquiries flowing in from completely left of field. How did you find me? I don't know. You just popped up on Google, you know, you just popped up here, you just popped up there. So, you know, time and time again, you know, every time I do this process, there's always fear that comes up, and there's always that attachment to, but you know, this looked after me and it brought in the income and I really enjoyed it. And do I really want to let it go? Yeah, you do, because there's always something more. And I usually have, you know, a little death ritual, you know, as I'm letting things go as well. So like putting it out to the universe with love, knowing that those opportunities are then available for others to pick up as well, because, you know, energy transmutes, it never leaves. So, you know, somebody else who was me a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, that could be the most perfect opportunity for them to step into their truth and their path as a change maker, or, you know, whatever their intention is.
Wow. Yeah, that really speaks to me. That's what I've been doing myself too. But this is not as far as just focusing, going, I'm not going to throw spaghetti at the wall and do a million things. I'm doing this. Yeah. So I can really relate.
But it's terrifying, especially when you know you can make a couple of dollars out of doing X, Y, and Z, because that's what you've always done.
Yeah.
But does it light you up?
Wow. All right. So let's see. You do very interesting things. Do I talk about the books or do I talk about the sex? Which would you like to go? I'll let you decide.
Look, is there a burning question? I think that's more important. Is there something that you want to ask?
I think both are fascinating, but okay, let's go for the sexy one first. Like, how did you end up guiding people with that? Tell me all about that.
Okay, so this is going to sound very, very cliche, but it found me. So back in, you know, previous lifetimes, reflexology was my main gig. And then I stepped into fertility reflexology. And during that time, hosting women's circles and meditation and psychic development, all of those things as well. So very much always focused on women and bringing the best out in each other. You know, coming back into your truth, letting go of all the crap that doesn't matter, all the conditioning. So went into fertility reflexology, and then I found womb massage. And I did that for a few years. And it was like, okay, well, where do we go from there? And it literally landed in my lap, which I feel was the natural extension to womb massage, which is Yoni Massage. And for those who don't know, Yoni is the Sanskrit word for all of your glorious lady parts. So the womb, the ovaries, the vulva, the vagina, the whole works. And it's pretty much the only word that encompasses all of that, which is why, you know, you see it thrown around, or you may not have seen it thrown around, but, you know, in these very sort of neo-spiritual communities, Yoni is like a buzzword.
Okay.
And it seemed like that natural progression, that I had clients starting to ask if it was something that I offered. And I'm like, look, if it's meant to be, it'll find me. And within about 2 weeks, you know, this beautiful woman appeared. She was running the course within the month. It was a 6-month intensive, the only accredited training in Australia, which was super important to me because a lot of these trainings are not, it's not a regulated industry. So it was super important that this wasn't going to be like a, you know, one and done weekend happy time. And then, you know, that's that. So it was super, super intensive. And there was so much healing and so much conditioning for me to move through as well, in terms of who I am and how I was going to offer this to the world. And it is absolutely, without a doubt, the missing link in women's healing. So I see, you know, women from 19, 20 years old. I think my eldest client's been 68, which is fabulous, for a whole number of reasons. Sometimes, it's about their anatomy. We're not educated on our pleasure anatomy. If it was up to high schools, all we're taught is how to have babies or how not to have babies. We're not taught about a woman's pleasure. So often, and I run these beautiful anatomy workshops too, and often women are blown away by the fact that there's all these zones and points and areas that they had no idea. And of course, how can our beautiful men know what to do and how to pleasure and honor and worship us if we don't know what's happening down there ourselves? So sometimes, women are coming purely to learn about their own anatomy. Other times, there's trauma from birth. So numbness, scar tissue, things like that stop them from being able to make love. And so there's exercises and things that we can do in order to stimulate blood flow, get them super comfortable back in their bodies rather than disassociating from their bodies. And same with sexual trauma. Hormones and menopause and fertility. There's so many reasons. And the beautiful thing about it is that, if a woman was to come to meet with me, today, for example, and have a session and then come back tomorrow, it would be completely different. The alchemy that happens between myself and clients in the moment, in that space and time, is exactly what they need in that space and time. And it's so fascinating. The healing that happens, the body love that happens and results from this work is enormous. It's such a beautiful gift, and there are not a lot of women prepared to step into this work. So I guess when it found me, it was like, oh, well, okay then. and with that, it's been such a beautiful journey and healing all of itself.
So not many women step into it. Is that because, I guess, of what the topic is, you got to be a little bit brave 100%. To just step out there and go, hey, this is what I do, mum and dad and grandma. Exactly. I think it took my own mum about 2 years to learn what Yoni Massage actually was. And she's like, it just hadn't even occurred to me that was a thing. I'm like, I know. And that's why I'm here, to make it a thing. Let's make it boring. Let's, take the taboo out of it so that everybody, no longer feels shame, no longer feels guilt, no longer feels unable to connect with themselves and connect with their partners and be intimate and, no longer hates their bodies. Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like it's needed, especially, not that I'm, the feedback I get, not that I've got direct experience, but I get pretty strong feedback from people that do social work and stuff like that and work with kids, is that kids these days are learning about sex through hardcore violent porn. And this is kind of what women think is expected of them, to accept violence and that they should be chopping up their labia and and then men think that, or boys are growing up thinking that women will enjoy it that way and all of that, and that just feels like we've got such a taboo around something that should be the complete opposite, that should be loving.
Absolutely. Like, we are here to be worshipped. End of. And I am here to teach how to receive and how to, and how to give worship, essentially, because we are so much more than a whole.
Exactly. And nobody wins with that approach.
That's right. Yeah.
No, they don't know what they're missing, perhaps. But okay. All right. Is there anything else you want to say on that before we move on to your publishing side?
No. Oh, good.
Okay. Tell me about the publishing. Why are you doing that? What's your mission there?
Look, very, very similar, although, when you look at them objectively, they don't look the same. But again, it's about, the opportunity to go within, to reconnect to self, to share stories, to inspire others. A lot of the stories that have been written through Maven Press The feedback that we get is that these stories are giving others permission to feel or to experience or to live how they're doing without shame, without judgment. I feel like, books in general are a way of building community. They're a way of bridging gaps and bringing people together, educating, but also, having that sense of, when you're really into a book and you're so in love, with the main character, and you really feel like you have this beautiful relationship and you're resonating with things, and you're like, in a real life we could be like best friends, and oh, she's super courageous, or oh, like she's really making me uncomfortable, and you really get soaked in. And I think, when people are sharing their real stories and they are actually real people, it's not only a beautiful catharsis for the authors, but for those reading. And on that subject, so when I get a download for a new book, I'm at the moment I've done quite a few anthology books, and when I'm getting the download for those, the intention is always that there is a healing process involved for the author as well, which is a really fascinating process, and we talk about that in our working groups, and I let them know that, look, there's going to be a time when you want to throw this out the window, or you want to give up, or imposter syndrome comes to meet you, but I'm like, just trust it, like this is all part of the process. It's an unraveling, and you might end up writing 6 or 7 times before you feel like you have the right story, when it's at that point where you feel like you can then give it out into the world and you're no longer attached. Whereas that process of writing number 1, number 2, allowing the tears to flow, allowing the feelings to come up, to be met, to be felt, to be released, it's such a process. So it's so much more than writing a book. And I think so across the board, my intention is to, hold women and men through healing processes until they learn, how to love themselves. And I feel like, with the body work, it's amazing. It's transformative. It really gets, there's nowhere to hide. And life continues to change. And then I feel like with the books, it's more of an internal process. They're going through that themselves, but then they have this beautiful physical representation of that journey for themselves in the book at the end. So that to me, they're very similar in energy in terms of what I want clients and authors to get out of their process, but tackling it from 2 very different perspectives, if that makes sense.
It does. It sounds amazing. So have you had challenges in pursuing these passions of yours along the way?
Oh, there's always challenges. Yeah, absolutely. Being such a baby in the publishing industry, leaning on beautiful Karen to be like, okay, so how do we actually publish books? and getting, when you're working in multi-author books, getting deadlines, holding 20, 25 people and having to be like, look, we can't just have this going on forever. Like, you actually need to submit. You actually need to submit your story now, because there's 20 other people that are waiting on you. So, managing people in a much more practical way has been a learning curve for me, and sort of pushing me to step out into more of that authority. Whereas, I don't like conflict at all. And so, having to be on to people and getting deadlines met, and that's been really interesting and a beautiful opportunity for my own growth. And certainly with each book, I'm getting much better at that, but also I know the process, I know when people are going to fall, and I can kind of pre-plan for, meltdowns and things like that. And then in terms of body work, not so much these days. I work from home again now. I had a healing centre, which I sold about it just coming up for a year ago. So running that was quite intense. The admin side of that was a lot, and I found that it wasn't in alignment. And so coming back and setting up a beautiful healing space at home means that everything can just flow with ease and with grace. And certainly in these past couple of years, that's been quite easy. And like I said, I'm fully booked. I haven't had to advertise in a very, very long time.
And what feeling does it give you when you see, people change to the other side of these experiences?
Oh, it's absolutely amazing. And it really sort of puts me back into that humble space of, okay, this is my why. It's all about the transformation and the ripple effect of that transformation. Actually, I've just closed submissions for a book called Letters to My Daughter, which is essentially, a group of anecdotes or letters to real daughters or, the next generation of upcoming women. And my mother wrote in this book and I wrote in this book. And when I received my mum's chapter, I completely lost it. There was so much healing. There were so many things that perhaps, weren't able to be said, at a particular time or at all. But, given the space to be vulnerable and to write something down was so, so beautiful. And it's beautiful for me to receive that as a daughter. And then my daughter's 10. And it was actually just last week, I said, I'd like you to read this and let me know how you feel about it and if you feel okay with it being published, because it was about her. And in the end, we sat on the couch together and I ended up reading it out to her and she sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. And she said, "Mum, I feel so loved and so seen." And I was like, holy shit.
Oh my goodness.
That's the power. Yeah, that is the power and the transformation. And through my own mother line, through, which is going to continue to heal and heal and heal. So this has been a super powerful book. Super, super powerful book. I can't wait to share that one.
Wow, I can't wait to get my hands on it myself. It sounds amazing.
I did get permission from my 10-year-old to publish my piece of writing.
So I assume so after that. Okay. All right. Well, I think we're running out of time. So is there anything that we didn't say that you would like to, is there any message that you have that you'd like to say to anyone listening?
I guess just dare to be wrong. Dare to be wrong. Yeah.
That's it. That's all about, choosing not to give in to fear, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Beautiful. I love that. Okay, so where can people find you?
You can find me at lauraelizabeth.com.au or mavenpress.com.au or Facebook Erotic Maven Medicine and Instagram Erotic Maven Medicine or Facebook Maven Press, Instagram Maven Press.
Okay, well, we will put all those in the show notes to make it easy for people, and we'll put a link to the Women Changing in the World book so people can grab that too. So thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much.